Welcome to Chapman Crime in Every Small Town. There are stories that were never supposed to be told, quiet disappearances, strange clues, and mysteries that still echo decades later. These are the ones that never let go. August 30th, 2013. The kind of late summer morning that looks ordinary until it isn't. 19-year-old college student Bryce Laspisa had finished his second week of classes at Sierra College in Rocklin, California. He was charismatic, creative, and close to his parents, who lived 6 hours away in Orange County. That Thursday evening, he called his mother, Karen, and told her he'd be coming home the next day. But overnight, something changed. The first signs. Friends later said Bryce had been acting strangely, staying up all night, giving away personal items, and drinking heavily. Around 11 p.m., he texted his girlfriend to end their relationship, telling her she'd be better off without him. Concerned, she called his parents. Karen phoned Bryce immediately. His voice was calm, reassuring. He said he was fine and would see them soon. By 9 a.m. the next morning, his car, a beige Toyota Highlander, was captured by highway cameras heading south toward Los Angeles. Then, inexplicably, it turned around and began driving north again. The odd detour. Bryce stopped at a gas station in Buttonwillow, California, a small town off Interstate 5. He sat there for hours. The owner of a local truck stop remembered him clearly, polite, quiet, eyes distant. At 9 p.m., Bryce's mother called him again. He said he pulled over to rest and would be home soon. By midnight, he was still in Buttonwillow, less than 3 hours from home. At 2 a.m., roadside assistance helped him after he ran out of gas. The technician said Bryce appeared exhausted but alert. When asked where he was going, he replied softly, home. The final hours. At 4:30 a.m., his car was spotted on a remote access road near Castaic Lake, headlights off, engine idling. Inside, investigators found Bryce's wallet, phone, and laptop neatly placed on the seat. But there was no Bryce. Blood on the driver's seat suggested a minor injury, but search dogs followed his scent only halfway around the lake before it vanished completely. No drag marks, no footprints beyond that point, nothing. The search. For weeks, helicopters, divers, and cadaver dogs combed the surrounding hills and water. Police believed Bryce had climbed out of the wreck and wandered off in shock. Others suspected something darker, foul play or suicide. But without a body, every theory was speculation. The theories. Some believe Bryce planned his own disappearance. His behavior in the days before hinted at deep turmoil. Others think he suffered a head injury from the crash and wandered into the wilderness disoriented. Searchers never found clothing, bones, or personal items in the years that followed. Then came the sightings. A young man matching Bryce's description living among transient communities across California. Every lead brought hope. Then heartbreak, none were confirmed. Legacy. Bryce's parents still maintain a tip line and revisit Castaic Lake each August. They believe he survived that night, somewhere out there, alive but lost to memory or trauma. His father once said, "It's not that he's gone, it's that he's still missing." No sign of struggle, no goodbye note, no trace. Just a car at the bottom of a ravine, a trail that ends at dawn, and a question that's haunted a decade of searchers. What happened to Bryce Laspisa? April 20th, 1989. A cold night on Highway 200 near Circle, Montana. 37-year-old Patricia Meehan, a former flight attendant turned ranch hand, had spent the day on her parents' farm. She told them she needed some time alone to think. She'd been struggling, feeling directionless, lost in life. At 8:15 p.m., Patricia got into her gray 1987 Toyota Corolla and drove east toward the Montana-North Dakota border. It would be her last confirmed journey. The collision. At about 10:15 p.m., near mile marker 98, another driver, a woman named Peggy Bowler, saw headlights in her lane. Patricia's car was coming straight toward her. The two vehicles clipped bumpers, spinning both cars across the road. When Peggy got out, shaken but unhurt, she saw Patricia standing silently beside her own car. Patricia didn't speak. She just stared, a blank, distant expression, as if she were looking through her. Then, without a word, Patricia turned, climbed a small fence, and walked into the open field. She was never seen again. The search. Police arrived within minutes. Patricia's car was still running. Inside were her purse, wallet, ID, and paycheck. There was no sign of injury, no blood, no footprints leading far enough to follow. It was as if she'd stepped into the night and vanished. Over the next few days, hundreds of volunteers searched the flat prairie. Helicopters scanned from above, and tracking dogs followed her scent for nearly 2 miles before it simply stopped. No clothing, no remains, no trace. Theories. Patricia's family described her as gentle but fragile. Friends said she'd seemed distracted in the weeks before, talking about needing to find herself. Some believed she'd suffered a mental breakdown after the crash and wandered away in shock. But then came the sightings. Within weeks, dozens of people across Montana, Washington, and even Seattle reported seeing a woman who looked just like Patricia, often dazed, hitchhiking or quietly sitting alone in diners. A waitress in South Dakota swore she served her breakfast. A truck driver claimed she asked for directions to Spokane, then disappeared again. Investigators followed every lead, but each ended in dead air. The photo. One of the strangest reports came from Bozeman, Montana, where a group of college students claimed they saw a woman watching them from the edge of a crowd. When they took a picture, they later noticed her in the background, standing, staring directly into the camera. It looked eerily like Patricia. No one could verify when or where the photo was taken. Legacy. Patricia Meehan's parents kept her room exactly as it was. Her clothes folded neatly on the bed, her horse photos still pinned to the wall. Her mother once said, "I think she's alive. I think she just needed to disappear." Over the years, tips continued to come in, but none were confirmed. Her case remains one of Montana's most haunting modern mysteries, a woman who looked straight into another driver's eyes, and then walked out of her life forever. Lexington, Kentucky, October 27, 1961. It was a cool Friday night on the Transylvania College campus. 19-year-old sophomore Betty Gail Brown had spent the evening studying for a midterm, then drove home to her parents' house to borrow some clothes. She told them she'd be back at her dorm before midnight. She never made it. The discovery. At dawn, a man walking his dog past the old Morrison building, the centerpiece of Transylvania College. In the glow of the parking lot lights, he saw a small white car idling with the door ajar. Inside sat Betty Gail, slumped against the steering wheel, strangled with her own bra. Her books were on the passenger seat. Her glasses were on the dashboard. Her keys were still in the ignition. No sign of sexual assault, no robbery. Just a quiet, deliberate killing in the middle of campus. The investigation? Lexington police flooded the scene. The area around the car showed no footprints except Betty's. No one had heard a scream. Her body temperature suggested she had died between midnight and 2 a.m. Rumors spread instantly. Some said she'd been meeting a secret boyfriend. Others whispered that she'd stumbled upon something she shouldn't have, perhaps a burglary or an argument. The college closed for the day, and reporters arrived from as far as Chicago. The suspect. Months later, police questioned a local drifter named Alex Arnold. He'd been drinking heavily and confessed to killing a woman near the college, but his story was inconsistent. The wrong details, the wrong time, even the wrong car color. He later recanted, saying police had pressured him to confess. Still, he was indicted for murder and tried twice. Both trials ended in hung juries, and Arnold was released. Some believed the killer was a fellow student. Others suspected a faculty member. Her friends described her as cautious, polite, and deeply religious, unlikely to have gone anywhere willingly that late. The detail that haunted investigators most was the way her killer had used her own bra. It seemed personal, intimate, but calculated. Renewed interest. In the early 2000s, forensic experts re-examined evidence. DNA samples were degraded beyond testing. Old files revealed a chilling pattern, a series of unsolved strangulations across Kentucky and Ohio during that same year. But no match was ever confirmed. Legacy. Today, Betty Gail Brown's grave sits beneath an old maple tree in Lexington Cemetery. Students at Transylvania University still leave flowers there during finals week, a quiet tradition for a girl who never finished her exam. Her story remains a warning whispered in dorm halls every October, that evil doesn't always come from strangers in the dark. Sometimes it waits in familiar places, under flickering campus lights. October 24th, 1953, La Crosse, Wisconsin, a small Midwestern town where everyone knew their neighbors and children rode bikes until dusk. 15-year-old Evelyn Hartley was a high school honor student, quiet and responsible. That evening, she was babysitting for a professor's daughter while the parents attended my university homecoming game. She was supposed to call her father, Richard Hartley, at 8:30 p.m. for a routine check-in. When she didn't, he grew worried. By 9:30, Richard drove to the professor's house. Lights were on, the radio was playing softly, but no one answered the door. Inside, the furniture was overturned, A pair of Evelyn's shoes lay in the living room, and her glasses were bent on the floor. The back door was open, and the window screen had been cut. A small amount of blood was found smeared on the walls and on the lawn outside. Evelyn was gone. Within hours, the quiet town of La Crosse transformed into one of the largest search efforts in Wisconsin history. Over 2,000 volunteers combed nearby fields, creeks, and wooded trails. Dogs tracked her scent to a street 2 blocks away, then lost it. Police drained wells, searched barns, and even dug up sections of road. Farmers reported strange noises that night, a car speeding away, a woman's muffled cry, but nothing solid was ever found. Investigators believed Evelyn had been abducted by someone familiar with the neighborhood. Blood evidence suggested a violent struggle near the back door. There were rumors of a drifter, a local handyman, and even a traveling carnival worker, but none of those leads panned out. In the 1970s, a convicted murderer in nearby Illinois claimed he'd been part of Evelyn's abduction, but no physical evidence supported his confession. In later years, retired detectives revisited the case using new forensic methods. They confirmed that multiple people likely entered the house that night. Footprints indicated 2 men, possibly one carrying Evelyn out the back. A pair of men's work gloves found in the basement still remains one of the case's few tangible clues. Evelyn Hartley's disappearance changed La Crosse forever. Before that night, residents rarely locked their doors. Afterward, they kept them bolted. Parents no longer let their daughters babysit for strangers. The case remains open to this day, a 70-year-old mystery frozen in time. Evelyn's photo still hangs in the La Crosse Police Department hallway, her round glasses and gentle smile now a haunting reminder of innocence lost. Decades have passed, but the mystery of Evelyn Hartley refuses to fade. Over the years, police chased countless leads, drifters, traveling workers, even confessions that led nowhere. One man claimed he'd buried her near an old property in Illinois, but no remains were ever found. Another suspect's car held blood-stained clothes, but the blood wasn't hers. Every thread unraveled into silence. In 2004, investigators reopened the case with modern forensics, hoping DNA would reveal something new. The samples were too old, too fragile to speak. Evelyn's parents never stopped searching. Her father once said, "It's not knowing that hurts the most. It's wondering every day where she is." When he passed away, police placed one of her missing posters at his memorial, a quiet promise that they would keep looking. 70 years later, the cut window screen, the overturned furniture, and the broken glasses are all that remain. There's no grave, no confession, just a town that still remembers the night a 15-year-old girl walked into the dark and never came home. December 23, 1981, Valdacie, North Carolina, a town of church bells, Christmas lights, and neighbors who knew everyone by name. 19-year-old Rhonda Henson had just left her company's holiday party. Heading home in her tan Datsun, she never made it. Around 1 a.m., a passing driver noticed her car parked on an embankment off Mineral Springs Mountain Road. The driver pulled over. The door was open, engine still running, headlights on. Rhonda was lying face down beside the car, a single bullet wound in her back. Investigators later determined the bullet had been fired through the trunk of her vehicle, piercing the metal before striking her. It was an impossible shot, clean, deliberate, and fatal. Her purse, wallet, and jewelry were untouched. This was no robbery. At first, detectives thought she might have been followed home from the Christmas party. But friends said Rhonda had been nervous all week, saying she felt watched and didn't want to drive alone at night. One friend recalled her whispering, "Something isn't right." Ballistics showed the bullet came from a high-powered rifle fired from an elevated spot near the road. It was as if someone had waited for her to pass and taken careful aim. Police questioned her boyfriend, Greg McDowell, who admitted they had argued that evening but denied involvement. Rumors spread quickly through town. Jealousy, a secret relationship, a stalker, even whispers of a hidden pregnancy, none ever proven. Despite thousands of hours of investigation, no fingerprints, weapon, or suspect were ever identified. The case went cold, but not forgotten. In the early 2000s, Rhonda's parents pushed for the case to be reopened. Modern forensics confirmed the shot had been fired from roughly 30 yards away, uphill from the road. It wasn't random. Whoever killed her had known her route and waited. Each Christmas, the town of Valdacie still decorates with white lights. But locals say there's one stretch of Mineral Springs Mountain Road where headlights always dim, as if out of respect. Rhonda Henson was 19. She should have gone home to wrap gifts and wake up to Christmas Eve. Instead, her name became a reminder that even the safest towns can hide the darkest truths. June 7th, 1992, Springfield, Missouri graduation weekend. After celebrating with friends, 19-year-old Susie Streeter and 18-year-old Stacy McCall returned to Susie's home to spend the night with her mother, Cheryl Levitt. The next morning, all three were gone. The morning after, friends arrived at the Levitt home around 9 a.m. to carpool for a trip to a water park. The front door was unlocked. Inside, purses, keys, and cigarettes were neatly in place. The television was on fuzzy static. There were no signs of a struggle. Outside, the porch light bulb had been unscrewed, and Susie's car was parked in the driveway. The only strange detail, the family dog, Cinnamon, was frantic but unharmed. The investigation? Police at first thought the women had gone out early and would return. But hours turned into days, and the clues stayed frozen in that quiet house. Friends reported odd phone calls received at the home just before, 8 a.m. hang-ups, and one sexually explicit message that was quickly deleted. Detectives scoured the neighborhood, interviewing over 250 people. No signs of forced entry. No ransom demand, no trace. Theories. Early on, investigators suspected a transient abductor or someone the women knew. A convicted kidnapper named Robert Cox, living in Springfield at the time, was questioned. He hinted at knowing what happened, even telling reporters the women were dead, but he refused to say more. Without evidence, he was never charged. In 2007, ground-penetrating radar scans at a local parking garage revealed 3 possible anomalies shaped like graves, but excavation was denied, citing construction safety. To this day, the site remains untouched. The legacy. The Springfield Police Department still keeps the women's photos above their desks, a constant reminder of a mystery that never left town. Their disappearances changed how small communities thought about safety. Doors that had never been locked before suddenly were. And 3 names became legend. Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, Stacy McCall. 3 women, 1 night, and no trace. April 4th, 1991, Clinton, Missouri. A quiet town, population under 10,000, where people left their doors unlocked and the streets empty by 10 p.m. 20-year-old Angela Hammond had finished a backyard barbecue with friends and was heading home. At 11:15 that night, she stopped at a payphone outside a grocery store to call her fiancé, Rob Schaefer. They talked for a few minutes about weekend plans, about their baby on the way. Then Angela mentioned something odd. A green pickup truck kept circling the lot. The driver, she said, was watching her. He pulled up beside the phone booth, got out, and started walking toward her. Angela described him, scruffy beard, baseball cap, holding a flashlight like he was pretending to look for something. Rob heard her voice tighten. "He's still here," she whispered. Then came a scream, and the line went dead. Rob jumped into his car and tore through the empty streets toward the payphone. Halfway there, a pickup matching Angela's description passed him going the opposite way. Through the window, he saw a man driving, and Angela in the passenger seat, struggling. He turned around and gave chase, speeding after them for miles. But Rob's transmission blew out. The truck disappeared into the dark. Angela was never seen again. Police scoured the town, interviewing dozens of witnesses. One woman reported seeing the same green truck near the grocery store earlier that night. The composite sketch of the driver, white male, 30s, dark hair, facial stubble, was distributed nationwide. Investigators initially suspected a connection to a series of abductions across Missouri and Kansas that summer. A suspect named William Stevens, known for traveling with a green pickup, was questioned but cleared. For decades, no solid leads surfaced. Rob was cleared early on. His 911 call and vehicle damage matched his story. Some investigators now suspect Angela's case may be linked to the Springfield 3 disappearances the following year, another small-town mystery with eerie similarities. But without evidence, it remains speculation. More than 30 years later, Angela Hammond is still missing. Her family still marks April 4th as the day their world went silent. And in Clinton, Missouri, that lonely payphone has become a symbol, a reminder that even the smallest towns can hold the darkest secrets. April 12, 1981, Ketty, California, a remote mountain town tucked into the Sierra Nevadas. Once a quiet railroad stop, it had become a peaceful retreat for low-income families seeking a slower life. But that spring morning, Cabin 28 changed Kitty forever. The discovery. At 7 a.m., 14-year-old Sheila Sharp returned home after spending the night with a neighbor. When she opened the front door to her family's cabin, she froze. Her mother, Sue Sharp, lay on the living room floor, bound, beaten, and stabbed. Beside her were the bodies of her 15-year-old son, John, and his friend Dana Wingate, 17. The room was in chaos, overturned furniture, blood spatter, and broken lamps. The phone cord had been cut clean from the wall, but inside a small bedroom, 3 children were still alive. Tina Sharp, 12, was missing. Her younger brothers, Rick, 10, and Greg, 5, and their friend Justin Smart were unharmed, sleeping in the next room through the entire attack. The scene. Investigators said the scene looked like an explosion of rage. 2 different knives had been used, along with a hammer and the butt of a rifle. One knife was bent almost in half from the force. Sue had been gagged with her own underwear and tape, her wrists and ankles bound with electrical wire. Blood patterns showed at least 2 killers were inside the cabin, but there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting Sue knew her attackers. The missing girl. For a year, the case stalled. Then, in April 1984, 3 years after the murders, a child's skull and bones were discovered, 80 miles away in the woods near Feather Falls. Dental records confirmed they belonged to Tina Sharp. Her discovery deepened the mystery. Who took her and why? The suspects. Detectives initially focused on 2 local men, Martin Smart and his friend John O. Babide. Martin was the stepfather of Justin, the boy who slept in the cabin that night. He told police his hammer had recently gone missing, and his wife Marilyn said he'd burned clothing shortly after the murders. John was a drifter with criminal ties, recently paroled and staying next door. Despite inconsistencies in their statements, both men were released without charge. In later years, newly unearthed reports showed disturbing omissions. The original sheriff had received a letter from Martin Smart, confessing that he might have hurt Sue because she told Marilyn to leave him. That letter was never entered into evidence. Renewed investigation. Decades later, Plumas County investigators reopened the case with modern DNA testing. In 2016, a rusty hammer matching the suspected murder weapon was found in a local pond. DNA recovered from tape at the scene matched a living suspect connected to both Martin and John. Officials have publicly stated they believe they know who committed the murders, but haven't yet gathered enough evidence for prosecution. Cabin 28 was torn down in 2004, its wood left to rot in the grass. But for residents of Keddie, the shadow never lifted. Many still believe the truth was buried along with Tina, covered by fear, corruption, or simple indifference. 40 years later, the cabin remains gone, but its story still echoes through the trees. In small towns, evil doesn't need a motive, only silence to hide in. June 1968, Good Heart, a summer resort town surrounded by pine forests and the endless blue of Lake Michigan. It was a quiet place where families escaped the noise of the cities to fish, swim, and watch the stars. But that summer, silence took on a different meaning. Richard Robison was 42, a successful advertising executive from Detroit. He and his wife, Shirley, owned a small red-roofed cabin on a bluff overlooking the lake. That June, they packed up their 4 children, Richie, Gary, Randy, and Susan, and left for a month-long vacation. They planned to rest, write letters, and spend time away from phones and clients. For weeks, friends back in Detroit received cheerful postcards. Then, without warning, the letters stopped. The discovery. On July 22, 1968, neighbors noticed the Robison cabin's mail piling up. A strong, sour odor drifted from the woods. When the caretaker forced open the door, what he found would haunt Good Heart forever. All 6 members of the Robison family were dead, their bodies left inside the small cabin for nearly a month. They had been shot and bludgeoned. Richard was found near the doorway as if trying to protect his family. The children were in their beds. Shirley lay nearby, her arm reaching toward them. It was a scene so brutal and so quiet that investigators struggled to comprehend how no one had heard a thing. The investigation. State police determined the killings had occurred around June 25th, weeks before discovery. The weapon was a .22 caliber rifle and a hammer. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing had been stolen. Detectives soon focused on one man, Joseph Scalaro III, Richard Robison's employee and business associate. He managed the family's advertising company back in Detroit and had access to their finances. In the months before the murders, thousands of dollars had gone missing from the company accounts. Richard had recently confronted him. When police searched Scalaro's home, They found ammunition matching the murder weapon and financial documents linking him to embezzlement. He failed 2 lie detector tests and couldn't account for his whereabouts during the week of the murders. But no gun was ever found, and no witness could place him at the cabin. The cover-up theory. Investigators believed Scolaro may have driven north to Goodhart, killed the family to silence Richard, and staged the scene to look like a random attack. He then returned to Detroit as if nothing happened, even cashing company checks in the following days. But without a weapon, prosecutors couldn't bring a case. For years, the Robison murders remained open. Then, in 1973, Scolaro died by suicide in his office, leaving a note apologizing for letting everyone down, but stopping short of confession. Beside him were unspent rounds of the same caliber used in the murders. Legacy. The Robison cabin was eventually demolished, the site reclaimed by pine and wild grass. Local residents still speak of the lingering sadness that hangs over the bluff, a silence that feels heavier than the wind. The case remains technically unsolved, though investigators are convinced they know the truth. A family gone, a killer untried, and a small town that learned evil doesn't always arrive with warning. Jefferson Davis Parish, Louisiana, population just over 30,000, a place of bayous, pickup trucks, and porch lights that flicker against the swamp air. It's a quiet community where gossip travels faster than the wind. But between 2005 and 2009, that small-town charm was replaced by fear, and the name, Jeff Davis, became shorthand for one of the strangest unsolved cases in Louisiana history. The first body. May 20th, 2005, the body of 28-year-old Loretta Chasen Lewis was found floating in a canal outside Jennings, Louisiana. Police noted signs of asphyxiation, possible drug use, and trauma, but little else. Her death was ruled suspicious, yet no arrests were made. Weeks later, another woman went missing, then another. By 2009, 8 women from the same small community had been found dead, all dumped in or near the same waterways. They became known as the Jeff Davis 8. The victims. Each woman knew the others. They were sisters, cousins, friends, all struggling with addiction, poverty, and survival. They lived within blocks of one another. Some had acted as informants for the local sheriff's office, passing on small tips about drugs or prostitution. All of them were young, the oldest was 30, and every one of them ended up in a ditch or canal, partially clothed, with eerily similar injuries. The investigation. From the beginning, something felt wrong. Evidence went missing. Witnesses claimed their statements were changed or ignored. The sheriff's office publicly blamed a serial killer, but many locals believed something darker was at play, corruption from within. One of the victims, Crystal Shea Benoit, had reportedly told friends she feared local police were involved. Another, Nicole Guillory, said she had seen deputies dispose of evidence before her death. Days later, she was found dumped beside Interstate 10. In 2009, state police took over, citing possible conflicts of interest. But after years of review, no single suspect was identified, and no one was ever charged. The theories. There are 2 main possibilities. 1. A serial killer working the same routes, targeting women connected by circumstance. The similarities between the victims suggested a single hand guiding the violence. 2. Complicity. A network of suggesting that members of law enforcement or their associates were either involved or covering for one another. Leaked case files later showed that several deputies had relationships with some of the victims, and one officer was caught disposing of evidence in unrelated cases. For locals, it became less about who killed the women and more about who was willing to protect the killer. The town. Jennings today looks quiet again, pastel houses, swamp grass, church bells. But the memory lingers like humidity. Every year, families of the 8 women gather by the canal to light candles and pray for justice that never came. They say the water took their daughters, but the town kept their secrets. The victims' names. Loretta Chasen Lewis, Ernestine Marie Daniels Patterson, Kristen Gary Lopez, Whitney Dubois, Laconia Muggy Brown, Crystal Shea Benoit Zeno, Brittany Gary, Nicole Guillory. 8 women, 8 unanswered deaths. And somewhere in the dark veins of Jefferson Davis Parish, the truth still waits, silent, like the water that keeps its secrets. Viewer discretion advised. This case is based on true events. Skidmore, Missouri, population barely 450. A farming town where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were noticed before they even parked their cars. It was the kind of place where doors stayed unlocked until Kenneth Rex McElroy moved in. Ken was a towering man, over 6 feet tall, with cold eyes and a reputation that stretched across counties. He was known for intimidation, theft, and violence, and yet he almost never saw jail time. Witnesses feared him, juries hesitated, and locals whispered that he had a gun in every truck he owned. For over a decade, McElroy terrorized Skidmore. He'd steal livestock, harass farmers, and threaten anyone who spoke up. He was suspected in arson, assault, and even attempted murder, but no one dared testify against him. The town's fear ran so deep that people crossed the street rather than meet his stare. Then came the Mr. Bowenkamp incident. In 1980, McElroy accused 70-year-old grocer Ernest Bo Bowenkamp of accusing his daughter of shoplifting. Days later, McElroy shot Bowenkamp in the neck while he stood behind the counter of his small grocery store. Miraculously, Bo survived. McElroy was arrested, charged with assault, and released on bail. He drove around town afterward, sitting in his pickup outside the Bowenkamp's home, rifle in hand as if daring someone to stop him. No one did. On the morning of July 10th, 1981, the townspeople gathered at the Legion Hall to discuss what to do about McElroy. Dozens attended, farmers, shopkeepers, parents, tired of living in fear. Someone suggested asking for more police patrols. Someone else said it was too late for that. Moments later, word spread that McElroy was at the D&G Tavern drinking beer. When the meeting ended, the crowd walked toward Main Street. They surrounded McElroy's pickup. Inside sat Ken, his rifle visible on the rack, his wife Trenna beside him. No one knows who fired first or how many guns were raised. Witnesses later estimated between 30 and 50 people stood nearby. Shots rang out, shattering the truck's windows. McElroy slumped over the steering wheel, killed instantly. Trenna screamed, ducking low, glass falling around her. When police arrived, she pointed at the crowd and cried out names, but no one else spoke. Not a single person admitted to seeing who pulled the trigger. Dozens of witnesses, one dead man, and complete silence. The investigation went nowhere. No weapon was ever recovered, no arrests made. The FBI questioned residents for months, every man, woman, and teenager, but the answer was always the same. I didn't see who did it. To this day, the killing of Ken McElroy remains unsolved. Some called it vigilante justice, others called it liberation. Skidmore moved on, but its name became synonymous with one question: what happens when a town decides to protect itself instead of waiting for the law? The years after the shooting brought more tragedy to Skidmore. Other disappearances, other deaths, as if the curse of silence never left. Even now, the old men in the diner will pause before mentioning McElroy's name, lowering their voices just slightly. In a town that once feared him, the silence remains louder than any gunshot. November 1997. Montreal, Canada, a city divided by cold rivers and sharper loyalties. Scott Steiner was 33 years old, confident, street smart, and well known to police. To some, he was a charming entrepreneur. To others, he was one of the most dangerous men in Quebec's criminal underworld. Steiner had been part of the notorious Hells Angels Nomads chapter, an elite inner circle at the heart of the Quebec biker wars of the 1990s. Those wars left over 160 people dead in turf battles for control of drug routes stretching from Montreal to the U.S. border along the St. Lawrence River. The river that linked nations also hid bodies and secrets. The disappearance. On November 4th, 1997, Scott Steiner vanished. He'd told associates he was heading to a meeting but never returned. At first, few were surprised. Members of his world disappeared all the time. Some went underground, others were found in ditches. But Steiner was different, powerful, connected, and careful. His absence sent a quiet shock through Montreal's criminal scene. For months, nothing surfaced. Then, in April 1999, nearly a year and a half later, fishermen spotted something floating near the Beauharnais section of the St. Lawrence Seaway. At first, they thought it was driftwood tangled in ice. When police arrived, they realized it was a human body, wrapped and bound. The currents had carried it from somewhere upriver. The discovery. The remains were identified through dental records as Scott Steiner. The autopsy revealed he'd been beaten and tortured before death. His skull had multiple fractures. His hands and ribs were broken. He hadn't drowned. He'd been killed first, then dumped into the river. Investigators traced the plastic wrapping to industrial suppliers in Montreal, often used in auto body shops and shipping yards. One detective later said, "It wasn't rage, it was a message." The investigation. Police believed Steinert had fallen victim to an internal purge within the Hells Angels. By 1997, tensions inside the organization had reached boiling point, old alliances shifting, power consolidating under rival leader Maurice Boucher. Steinert was rumored to be planning a breakaway group to challenge Boucher's control. That rumor was enough to sign his death warrant. Confidential sources later told police that Steinert was ambushed, held captive for hours, and interrogated before being executed. But those reports were never proven in court. No one was ever charged. The river. The St. Lawrence is vast, 744 miles of cold, moving water connecting the Great Lakes to the Atlantic. It's said that anything dropped into it can drift hundreds of miles before surfacing. Local officers still believe Steinert's body was meant never to be found. Only a shift in current during spring thaw brought him back. Legacy. The murder of Scott Steinert marked a turning point in the Quebec Biker War. Within months, other high-ranking members disappeared or were arrested. The violence slowed, but the message was clear. Loyalty had a depth and a cost. Today, the St. Lawrence looks peaceful, cargo ships, moving silently past the same waters that once carried the body of a man who knew too much. And beneath those waters, investigators say, there are still names that never made it onto any official list. Viewer discretion advised. This case is based on true events. Sunday, the 17th of December, 1967. Cheviot Beach, Point Nepean, Victoria, Australia. A shoreline of deep blue water, treacherous currents, and a narrow strip of sand. 59-year-old Harold Edward Holt was on holiday at his beach house with friends and family. He'd just returned from a morning of snorkeling and sunbathing when he decided to take one more swim in the choppy surf. No one could have known it would be his last. Holt had served as Australia's 17th Prime Minister for less than 2 years, a charismatic leader who declared himself completely fit and eager for the job. That afternoon, under overcast skies and rising wind, he waded into the water. After a brief wave to onlookers on the shore, he disappeared beneath the surf within moments. Witnesses described the scene as sudden and final, like a leaf being taken out by the tide, one later said. The search. Within hours, a massive search operation was underway. At least 50 naval, Coast Guard, and police vessels, plus helicopters, combed the shore and sea around Cheviot Beach for days. Divers searched reefs and underwater caves. Boats grid-scanned the surface. Yet no body, no life ring, no equipment belonging to Holt was ever found. # Official findings. A joint report by the Commonwealth and Victoria. Police in January 1968 concluded the most likely cause, accidental drowning. They cited rough seas, strong currents, rising surf, and Holt's known habit of swimming in hazardous conditions. But the absence of physical remains created a vacuum of speculation, theories, and speculation. Almost immediately, rumors burned bright. Had Holt faked his death to escape politics? Could a shark, a rogue wave, or a secret submarine have claimed him? One especially persistent theory, widely discredited by experts, suggested Holt was picked up by a Chinese submarine and defected. Others argued he'd suffered a medical event and drifted away unseen. Some commentators noted his recent health issues, a shoulder injury, morphine-based pain relief, and signs of weariness. Australia declared his seat vacant, and a memorial service was held at St. Paul's Cathedral, Melbourne, on the 22nd of December 1967, attended by royalty and world leaders. Holt's disappearance remains one of the world's most publicized cases of a missing world leader. Locals still speak of Cheviot Beach as haunted, the waves whispering questions rather than answers. The phrase "to do a Holt" entered Australian slang, meaning to disappear without explanation. Maybe he underestimated the sea that day. Maybe he simply stepped too far from shore. The truth lies beneath the waves, silent, unresolved, and still sinking into legend. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for watching Chapman Crime. If you'd like to hear more true stories like these, please like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps keep these forgotten names alive. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.